I mean, they've been very clear that they want to preserve the work that they did, the production that they made, and I think the actor is probably going to like the space so that he can make an authoritative cross, whereas before he couldn't do that, But the set is going to be the same with that simple spare furniture. Ron right away loved that window over there and could imagine him perching on the window and looking out. There was this whole component that was about the outside world that came in through the windows. We have that, but it's a completely different version of it. And they just will be sparked, I think, by this difference to capitalize on what's available, right?
It'll give both the director and the actor a lot more freedom.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot more freedom to move, as you say. And of course, I think the major part of the adaptation will be adjusting the dialogue to the space.
Right.
And so, but Mark has a great presence. I think he's going to really like this. And the windows here are just spectacular.
You can picture him framed by that window. And we chose to make this very steep seating bank because we want everybody to see every single thing that he does, right? And even though you're kind of far back relative to Pinborough, I think that steep rake is going to provide a kind of intimacy.
I think it will. I think it's going to work out very, very well.
We like the shape of the roof. It's a kind of a reference to a Quaker meeting house in a way. Yeah, or a place of worship, or it's old-fashioned, and we really think it's cool that there is this paint line around the whole space, and there was an LED lighting effect, right? And this line made them expand that. So from the audience's perspective, that LED line, I think it does end at the back of the seating bank, so it's not across the back of the room, but it's going to encompass the whole space, audience, and stage.
No, it looks really good. And of course, Ron is a real pro.
Yeah.
And he has worked so many different kinds of theaters, and I know he's excited about this one because it is something different.
The also Aunt and Isabel they're young to me, so it's impressive that they're so thoughtful, and he really completely listens to them and has incorporated them, and
That's right.
and they've been really specific and wonderful with our team. They're getting along like a house on fire, and that to me is very wonderful to see because my team's young too, and yet they're delivering exactly what these folks want.
Be careful with metaphors like house on fire.
Oh, good point. I just read that Biden said something untoward at.
Really?
Yeah, I mean he. I don't know if it was late night comedy made up,
Right.
or he actually said something that he shouldn't have said. But good point.
So what about the lighting? Is that replicating London?
Yes, they had a very elaborate plot. It's simple, but the lighting and sound add layers of complexity to the show, and they really cared a lot about replacing it. But lighting designers speak the same language, and ours here in Pittsburgh was really able to understand what he wants and how in this room with these I-beams existing as hanging positions, and how to make the pipe structure that was going to give the London lighting designer a similar sort of thing. Funny, I'm just looking as we speak at that box that has to do with the mechanism of the basketball pipe, and we wish it wasn't there. But we just concluded we're going to leave it. I mean, Ron could still change his mind when he gets here, and just black out that yellow sticker. Imagine it.
I want to tell you how much I like your team.
Aren't they nice?
I'm really impressed with everybody.
Performance is there's so much more light here than
Yeah.
London.
Indeed, yeah, indeed. I'm not sure what we'll do yet. You know, like we do decide things in the moment when once we got it all going on. They may want us to try to cover part of it for the daytime shows, which we would do, you know. Make something that fits in the upper half of the window, or right, that can come on and off. You name it, we've done it.
Yeah, I wonder how effective the lighting would be if there's that much light.
Yeah, not
Yeah,
so
no,
much.
this is a much bigger
Yeah.
set of windows than what we had.
Yeah, but Ron wants to make that come alive, make the outside come alive at a certain point, and that's what I hear. The latest is that there's going to be lighting that lights that up, lights that cool tower up. Yep.
I like that.
Todd Brown, our man, Todd Brown's been with Quantum since like 2000, a million years, and
Who's your lighting guy?
yeah, and he's done, you name it, he's done it. You know, made the moon come in from the outside because he had a light in a tree. Or you name it, right?
Yeah, how did you decide on this play?
Well, a really cool, famous, wonderful person I'm lucky to know, named Rob Orchard, was actually helping shepherd this to an American premiere. I guess he knows Ron Daniels. And the first thing you hear is that all these amazing people are connected to this effort. So, of course, I knew Naomi Wallace. I certainly knew of Marcus Rediker. I certainly knew of Ron Daniels. I didn't really know Mark Povinelli, but you take one look and you realize that he is a star in his own right. So I was so flattered to be asked by Rob Orchard if I would consider it. And then I just became more and more intrigued how these people who are very great in their own respective spots in their careers and in the world came together. And I realized slowly along the way what brought them together. And it's Benjamin Lay, I think. You know, it's the spirit of this character that Marcus brought back to the world as he must, because we need him so much, I think, right now. And what an example, you know. And I loved learning more about all the triangulating relationships, how Marcus and Naomi came to appreciate each other, how Ron has a history with Naomi, of course, that goes back so far, how they found the perfect actor, and then how they built it, you know, with love and heart and great young talents in the design realms in London, how it succeeded. And the Western Pennsylvania connection through Marcus, the Pennsylvania connection, because it's a story of Pennsylvania history, just made me feel really excited to add what we can add. And often our projects have things like that going on about them, you know, that it's not just about the art making, but it's about the context or embedding it in a certain way in the community, that the experience of it brings some of those connections to life. And there's a segue to the Braddock Library, isn't there, right? You know, we were going to do it, and we explained we are an environmental theater to Ron Daniels, and that meant we would be finding a site for the work, and I just think we found the perfect one.
Yeah, when they first told me you were going to do it, I thought maybe it was going to be at the Quaker, at the meeting house in Friendship. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then I was really pleased.
That it wasn't going to be there. You know, I thought of that too. I thought of a space of worship. I didn't actually even know that there was a Quaker meeting house in Pittsburgh. I mean, I had done a piece in the Unitarian Church on the north side and Trinity Cathedral downtown, you know, various places. But there were components of this quartet of artists who felt that was too literal. And there was like a desire to represent some of the things that they had at the Finborough. And I think we have it all here, right? You know, we have so much history of our own history. We have a place where people have gathered to protest, I dare say, here at the Braddock Carnegie Library, and to learn and to rise above, and then we're in this room that has these unusual shapes that reference a meeting house in a way. We have this magnificent arched window. In the Finborough, there was a relationship between the world outside through a window and the space that they were performing in. We have that times 10 kind of in this space. And I love that it's a return, you know, the word return is in the title. It's a return for quantum theater to the Braddock Carnegie Library. It's a return of the library long in the making. I think you would be a person who would know all about that. But I knew Vicky Vargo when we made 2 other works as early in this library as, I think it was 2008 was our first, 7, something like that was our first show here. And she is, she's devoted herself to this, and she's achieved this remarkable renovation. And that we would use the project to bring it to the public, you know, open it with this character who is an example to us all. What could be better than that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really pleased it's here because one is it does, I think the official reopening is going to be like May 29th.
May.
27th.
It was supposed to be in March, but it's back to
May. But this gives a preview, but also the idea that people could feel safe coming here.
Correct, Tony, right? And then that's like, that's the story of Braddock too. Patrick Jordan is my dear friend, you know, Bare Bones down the street, Stacy Pearl now across the street, the Oringer building, Greg Kander, his wife is on Quantum's board, Anna Hollis is on Quantum's board, so I've been following what Greg Kander's been doing. And I think that all of this together is helping, you know, people feel comfortable. Of course, I live 10 minutes up the road, as you do, right? I live right on the top of the hill. So in the warm weather, I walk through the cemetery, you know, and then I have a heck of a walk back up. I crawl back up. But it's the most pleasant walk to me, you know, and I'm excited to show Quantum's adventurous audience that it's perfectly safe. I don't think I'm the first one to show them. I think people are packing in at Bare Bones. We share the same run, by the way. They open on the 31st, a show, too. It's good. It's good. We can cross-promote. We can, again, make Braddock feel like an arts destination. I wish that Stacy has postponed a show that's going to open her new space, but it's not till like June, I think.
Yeah, they're still working on this, basically.
They are, yeah. Well, that's a lot. That was a lot of talking.
No, that's great. You want to ask a question or two?
Yeah, you asked a question.
When did you first hear of Benjamin Lay?
I heard of Benjamin Lay in this phone call from this guy, Rob Orchard, who used to run American Repertory Theater at Harvard. He's like a beloved guy, and he was our Bloomberg Philanthropies grant consultant. That's the only reason I know him, but I loved him. I mean, we got money from Bloomberg, but we also got this consultancy for like, I don't know, 18 months. I talked to him once a month, and he shepherded us through the pandemic, and it was started pre-pandemic, but it went through the pandemic. And I mean, so when was that call? That was like, certainly more than a year ago, right? You know? When did you finish in London?
July 23.
Okay, so I think it was just after that. Just after that, with the energy of the production, Ron must have asked his friend Rob.
They worked together at Harvard.
Okay, so about some ideas for an American premiere.
Right.
And how cool that he called me. Well, he knew you were from Pittsburgh, so wasn't that perfect synergy, right?
And what did you think of Benjamin Lay when you first heard about him?
I couldn't believe it. You get through one hair-raising chapter of his life, and then you move on to the next, you know. It was hard to believe that this was a real person. And yet, the spirit feels very truthful.
And modern, yeah.
And modern, yeah.
Yeah. Have you done anything quite like this before?
No, we've only done, 2 other one-person performances. One that I did myself, so I mean I have that in my own history. It was in the Warhol Museum, and it was La Voix Humaine by Cocteau. And gosh, is it ever hard to stand up there by yourself, and it's only you and your mind, you know? It's and also this play called The Gun Show that was an interesting protest play about gun control that one man performed. That was a fluky, strange thing though, because the playwright was present at every performance of this play, and it really was about the fact that she was from. This is such a deviation. I'm sorry, I'm using your film. What was your question again? How did I first hear about it?
If it was 16 millimeter, I'd be upset.
Yeah. Naomi Wallace. Well, I mean, I know what all people of my level of accomplishment know of Naomi Wallace, that she's a genius, you know, that she's a great, great artist. And yet, I've been afraid of her plays, really. You know, they're so, they're not all so dark, although there is darkness. You know, she goes to the frightening places of the human experience. And so I just love that I'm doing a play by Naomi Wallace, and I think that you two are a remarkable combination. I mean, in my mind, I've really gone far. When I'm with both of you, you'll share more, I hope, you know, but about how your interests and her interest in the way history comes to be such rich material for drama and an exploration of the human spirit, right, came together. Yeah, so you two are 2 peas in a pod, as far apart as one would think you were. Yeah.
Naomi thinks that history is a higher art than theater.
I can easily believe that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. She's a very brave playwright. She will go places that other people won't go.
Just like history has done, right now. Yeah.
So for this type of play, I mean, in film, you make films which are called limited audience films. Mm-hmm. So you think this is sort of, I mean, I know like the films I make never get, because the way I structure them, they do that, you know, it's going to, but they'll be around for a good bit of time because you're playing with other stuff. You think that's what Quantum also does?
Yeah, I guess I have to admit Quantum does that. I mean, we like to always fight against that. I mean, we think our works are for everybody, and we think that there are things about them that make them of broader interest, whether it's the setting, you know, or I don't know. We feel people are ready to have an experience, and sometimes the plays provide, you know, a kind of experience that would draw a person who doesn't usually go to the theater. But, Tony, for sure, it's only a certain amount of people who want to go somewhere new in their mind, period, right? But this, like you said, it feels very modern. I love that we're giving this example of protest from history and of a place where somebody said, we're wrong, you know, we gotta change direction. And I mean, that's what we need to do now, right? I mean, I'm sure we've always needed to do that.
Yeah, I mean, what Benjamin lays down for me, it really gives me an argument against all the apologists for Jefferson and other slave owners.
Oh.
Because, yeah, it was,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and you can just look at all that as a metaphor for whatever the thing that all the people in power, because the status quo works for them, continue to make stone for a society, right? It's so transferable, I think, to a lot of things. So it's not only a play about that terrible institution of the past that we can be so glad, it's not just that.
What did you think when you first read the play?
Well, I was very intrigued by the flights of unrealistic fancy that it took, and I could see that it was rooted in this character, right? And it went through both history, through you, and through Naomi's genius also, right? I love that about it. I think if it had been super straightforward, it would not be the play that it is. So now the challenge, I think, for Quantum Theater, we've talked so much about him as an activist and an example of protest, but it's hard to also communicate his spirit as represented in the play, that it's very poetic at times, and it's again, you feel like, could this have really been a person? But the facts of his life, that he spent part of the time up there on the mast, or that he was in the cave, or that he had that relationship, that he loved that woman, all those things do point to this poetic, strange soul, and it's in the play, yeah, as well as the charisma and the showmanship and all that.
Did you, after reading the play, foresee any problems in staging it? What might be difficult about it?
Well,
you mentioned the spirit.
Yeah. I'm ready to see. Remember, I have not seen Mark Povinelli perform one word of the play, actually, right? So I am very interested to see how they achieved it. But I heard, that they worked so much, and that it was a kind of theater that Mark had not made, and they worked in advance of rehearsal across, over Zoom. The pandemic was actually an enabler for that. But I'm still very interested to see, and I'm just in the background here, right? I don't know. All I could do is say I believe they achieved, and I'm ready to give it some place great, and my good team that's going to build what they want.
Can you imagine how Ron's background in Shakespeare would make a difference?
Oh yeah, a character, this is a character who used words, right? And the words without a filter between the thought and the speech, that's very Shakespearean. Yeah. So, and Ron's just seen so much, and lived so much in the company of great characters and great performers interpreting them, that I'm not surprised that he's equally devoted to this, right? Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting for me to see the play again in Baltimore. It was like, I thought it was first just going to be a reading, but then they ended up using, big
Props and
television screen.
Oh.
And it was different, but it was just as engaging.
It worked that way too.
It really worked with it on a big stage with 500 people there, and with these monitors behind him, a big screen behind him.
That's really great to know, especially if he's delayed, that he did that so recently, in effect, 6 months ago he did that, and it was quite different. He probably really prepared for that, I bet.
The performance was different too, because he was mic'd.
He was
not mic'd in a much smaller room in
Yeah.
London, so it was a little bit of a different performance. And plus, it had been months since he had been on stage, over a year actually, doing the play.
Well, that's how some people, it hasn't really been my thing in the theater to go back to something, but some people really get so much from that, and Ron is so engaged in that too, whether or not he's going to be mic'd here. It's a big question. We had a meeting on Tuesday and talked all about it and how nimble we're going to be to respond to what they think in the moment, right? Yeah, but they love that. I think they're going deeper and deeper into their experience of this. So,
Can you say a little bit, Karla, about how the figure of Benjamin Lay fits with the Quantum Theater project?
Sure. I mean, we are mavericks and we are iconoclasts, I think, you know, so we are happy to be represented by Benjamin Lay for this time period. I also love that there's a trajectory for the work in America, you know, that it's going on to New York, and I hear Philadelphia also, yeah. So we are like the proud shepherds, you know, we're going to make sure everything is in place, and then we're going to send it on to those places. And I think that is an identification with the character of Benjamin Lay, right?
Benjamin was a shepherd, so are you.
Yeah.
So, the other day when we were at lunch, Marcus said something that John reminded me of, that they recently came across some new findings on Benjamin Lay, a person who was sympathetic towards him, and the writings were not as vicious or in describing him, because when Marcus says first with Ron played Benjamin Lay different than Marcus thought. I thought he was being too kind or a little too soft.
Okay.
But Mark said that's how he is. But
Probably
then
so.
with these new findings, it seems like it might be more of what Benjamin Lay did.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, these are all the exciting parts. Again, I haven't seen anything yet, but I think he is mending things. You know, I recently heard some of the sound design by John Leonard, and these are the words I said. I said, cool, because I think that's a nice, softer contrast with what I imagine, which is quite pugilistic, I think, actually. But he's all those things. I mean, he's poetic, and he's, he's like a warrior also, I think.
Poetic warrior.
Yeah. And maybe he was salty sometimes, and he had many character facets.
Many moods.
Yeah.
Yeah, what Tony just mentioned, a researcher working in the archives of the Moravian Church found a document that had been collected by Bishop Spangenberg of the Moravian Church, who was a contemporary of Benjamin Lay, and it was an eyewitness account of the bladder of blood incident.
Okay. Wow. Somebody wrote about it who got splashed.
This person was not an enemy of Benjamin's. Everybody else we have 4 other accounts of this event, and all of them were written by people who had some misgivings about his methods. And here was a person who depicted the whole thing as an act of love. An act of love. It was quite beautiful.
Yeah.
And an act of prophecy.
Right.
And that, of course, fits very well with how Benjamin saw himself. He did see himself as a prophet.
That is connecting in my mind to this John Leonard use of the ballad, the Friends song that ends with "I love you." You know, you've challenged me. I love you.
Yeah. Oh, the love part of it is really important to Benjamin, because this was a radical kind of love.
Yeah. Right.
In which you challenge people to build a world based on love.
Yeah.
And that really ancient adage of doing unto others as you would have them do unto you.
The love of animals.
Exactly. Yeah, the animals are a big part of the story. So, but it just goes to show you that historical research is never quite ever finished.
Yeah.
And here's a new document that gives a new vision of possibilities.
And how did this thing come to light?
I just got an email out of the blue from a young theology student who said, I found this document, can you help me? And I said, sure, and when he sent it to me, I was just kind of stunned by how unusual it was. And so I worked with him and discussed the various contexts of the document, and it ended up being his first publication. It was published in Quaker History. So that ended up being a very nice outcome, and now lots of people can see that.
Yeah.
So it just, that's the way it unfolded.
Cool. That's beautiful.
Okay. Karla, what do you hope people will take with them out of this play? In other words, as they walk out the door, what do you hope they're thinking about? And more precisely, as Benjamin would have asked, what do you hope they would do?
Well, I hope they feel affected by him. I hope that I think that that is a thing that the play wants to do, and I will say I always want theater to do this. I want the people to feel like those he spoke to in life, right? And I hope you just said that it was a radical act of love. So I hope they feel loved and respected, that they would be put in this position of challenge. And great theater is required for them to feel that, you know. And I trust that...
There's some sort of siren or something.
Okay, yeah, I hope that the audience will feel like the real recipients of Ben Lay's plea, and because I think that his example of willingness to know that, you know, we have to change, I have to change, I have to do something, is so necessary. It's always been necessary, but it's really necessary now. And great theater, I think, has the ability to transform, and these folks have an opportunity for that, thanks to all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if it's okay. I was thinking of coming on a community night and the night after.
You have to come on the 31st also, whenever.
Yeah, so and you know, get reactions from, especially like the two community nights.
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking with Benjamin Lay, I mean, the other perfect setting for Braddock is the fact, I mean, this was the French Indian.
Yeah.
They don't call it French Indian.
7 Years War.
7 Years War. Then you had the Whiskey Rebellion. Then you, of course, different steel strikes. Then
The birth of labor history.
Then most recently, the fight to save the hospital. And one successful fight we had, the fight against fracking. It was supposed to go at ET.
Right.
Yeah, so it's hoping the community can tie all this stuff.
100%. I mean, they're the current controversies of Fetterman, you know. Right?
Tony thinks he'll come.
Pardon?
Tony thinks he'll come.
I think he probably will come. You know, back in the day, he parked the cars in, you know, I mean, he was very beautiful to Quantum back in the aughts when we first did. He had us into his house, he directed the traffic in the parking lot. So he feels very connected.
He'll come right after he gets back from Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I was thinking you asked about. Okay.
Okay, let me tell the story from the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, I got an email from a young scholar named Larry Harold Jr., studying theology, a master's student, and someone who intends to be a Lutheran minister. And he had been studying the Moravian archives, and he found in the papers of Bishop Augustus Spangenberg an unsigned and undated document that was an eyewitness account of the moment when Benjamin Lay ran the sword through the bladder of blood and spattered everybody nearby. And what was so stunning about this document was that it was written by someone who was quite probably a friend of Benjamin Lay, and at the very least a supporter of Benjamin Lay, who described everything that happened in a completely different emotional register as compared to the 4 other accounts, two of which were written by Benjamin's avowed enemies, and the other 2 were written by people who had some, let's just say, some ambivalence about his methods. So I was I thought this was a major archival find, because it does give a different view of that event. And it turns out that the prophecy of the stabbing of the bladder was not the only thing that happened. That when Benjamin was thrown out of the Quaker meeting house, a group of people went with him. They left with him, and he led them down to the river, where he performed another ritual act, waving the sword, which I think was a reference to the slave trade, in which Quakers at that time were involved. And so the document even talks about how Benjamin thanked these people for the loving way that they responded to his actions, and that he went away feeling very happy about what they had done. So this really expands our knowledge of one of the most important events in Benjamin Lay's life.
Yeah, I think also, because you had mentioned that at one point you were talking to Mark about, Benjamin Lay might have been a little bit more, this way, and Mark said, well, that's not.
Yeah, okay, so I think of Benjamin Lay as a fierce fighter. He had to be, because so many people around him believed that slavery was a completely natural institution. So he was all on fire. And this translated into the way that he dealt with a lot of people, especially enslavers. He could be quite rough in dealing with them because he thought they were cooperating with Satan. So I tended to emphasize this part, the combative part of Benjamin's personality. But Ron Daniels and Mark Povinelli, they wanted a more loving part of it. Now, part of this was for dramatic reasons, because anger on stage can't be used too often, because it's something that degrades very quickly. And so there are angry moments in our play, but they're confined to specific portions of the play. But the thing that has happened, and I do think this is partly because of Mark Povinelli's personality, is that a loving and soulful part of Benjamin Lay comes out. And I think this is part of the power of the play.